Hey y'all, today we're looking at another 80s anime film with a bit more of a budget, Venus Wars. Is it any good? Well, let's find out. So Venus Wars is a film about wars. Okay, so in the far future of 2003, a comet hits Venus, causing it to mess up its atmosphere and allowing Earthlings to terraform and live on it. It then cuts to the year 2089, where many humans have migrated and been born on Venus, and have formed two different nations on Venus, Ishtar and Aphrodite. Tensions, however, have been brewing between the two nations, causing for an all-out war. A news reporter, Susan Summers from Earth, has traveled to Venus to get information about the war. While this is going on, a roller bike derby race is happening. The hero of our story, named Hiro oddly enough, is the leader of the Killer Commandos. He is trying desperately to win the race when all of a sudden the Ishtar army shows up and starts shooting at the raceway. Because of this, they are forced to retreat. As we find out, Ishtar has invaded and taken over the city of Io. The politicians and police have completely submitted themselves to the Ishtar authorities. Hiro and his ragtag group of racers, disgusted by the actions of Ishtar, decide to fight back the only way they know how, with their bikes and a couple guns owned by the team manager Gary. However, after a grueling battle with the army, Gary dies and the rest almost die too, but are saved thanks to the Aphrodite Freedom Force. As it turns out, they were already planning on attacking the Ishtar at the stadium, and just happened to save them. The crew are forcibly recruited by Lieutenant Kurtz, who thinks these racers' skills could prove very useful against the Ishtar tanks. Thus, the crew is forced to fight in the Venus Wars. So Venus Wars is a pretty interesting film. It is directed by Crusher Joe director Yoshikazu Yasuhiko. Venus Wars is a very good film that almost reaches greatness. But before I can get to that, there is plenty to love about this film. Compared to, say, Crusher Joe, this film looks way more impressive. The animation is stellar throughout, almost reaching Akira levels, which, came out the previous year. So I guess they must have had that movie on the mind. Like seeing Hiro evading the police on his bike is a visual treat. It's so awesome. Oh, by the way, all cops are bastards. Also, I'm watching the Blu-ray release of Venus Wars, and it's just gorgeous. I can see all the dirt and grain on the film. It's just so refreshing to see that when other Blu-rays try to scrub it off. Another thing I like about this film is that even though it takes place in the future, all the weapons, vehicles, and buildings are very urban. You think we'd see some spaceships or laser guns in the movie, but no. It's more of an urban setting that happens to take place on Venus. It really helps keep the film unique, unlike Crusher Joe, which did have spaceships and laser guns. Now, what I said earlier, this movie is good, but that's not to say it's perfect. It does have some major problems. But let's start with our main character, Hiro. Hiro, for the most part, is a pretty static character. He stays mostly the same throughout the film, not going through much development. That's not necessarily a bad thing, as some characters can go through a movie barely changing. But here I feel Hiro would have benefited from some development. He's mostly a hotshot biker going against authority. He's very cynical about how the Ishtar army has invaded and destroyed part of the city and lets them know. It's in stark contrast to his girlfriend Maggie, who is way more optimistic about things. Fortunately, Maggie herself isn't very developed in the film either. She's mostly there in the beginning of the film, cheering Hiro on. Then later on we see Hiro being chased by the cops. He stays out at her place. Now admittedly, this is a nice scene where she and Hiro share a tender kiss together, but after that she just disappears from the film until the very end where Hiro finds her again. It's just frustrating that a character that we could have cared about does almost nothing in the film. Our other main character, Susan Summers, is a bit different. She's a reporter from Earth desperately trying to find the story about the war on Venus and happens to bump into the Killer Commandos and tags along with them. She is sort of a mixed character. At times I like her go-getter attitude trying to get the story, and her relationship with Will is way more developed than Hiro and Maggie's. She also makes really dumb mistakes, like when she infiltrates the Ishtar base to kill the general, but forgets to turn off the safety, so she gets captured instead. So I don't really hate her, but I wish I could like her more. There's a few other characters like Will, Miranda, and Gary of the Killer Commandos, but with the exception of Will, none of the commandos feel developed enough in this film. In fact, some of them die, or end up leaving the military because of the deal Hiro makes to fight for them instead. It all just makes these characters feel like they could have been so much more, that they could have gotten way more to do. Why couldn't the rest of the Killer Commandos been able to fight in the final battle with Hiro? It makes absolutely no sense. Also, I had to point this out. There is a weird scene where a gay man hits on Hiro during their mission, and then we see him dunking out on the mission and telling Hiro that if he wants to survive, he needs to keep his head down. But minutes later, he along with a couple other soldiers get killed in an explosion. Is it trying to say that being a coward and not fighting will get you killed, while if you stand and fight you will survive? It just comes off weird and maybe even a little bit homophobic, because it's a gay guy getting killed. But anyway, with all that said, I don't hate this film. I think it's a real good movie that stops short of greatness. Maybe the original manga went into these characters more so that we could like them, but as a movie, they just don't get enough. Compared to, say, Crusher Joe, which balances its characters very well, getting to know them and understanding. You felt like you know who these characters were. I just can't say that about Venus Wars. Having said that, I still really like the film and would recommend you go see it. There's just enough good to like about this movie, and the animation will blow you away.